So now I want to introduce the next panel, which is called Cultures of Peecycling. And we have two speakers. The first one is Maureen Legrand, and she is going to talk about, her title is We Need to Talk About Nitrogen, Some Experiences Between Art and Science. And Maureen is rooted, her work is rooted in environmental anthropology. Her research focuses on the greening of landscape planning and city making in post-industrial contexts. And within the OCAPI, which is the research center where she works, within the OCAPI Action Research Program in France, she works on the emergence of new modes of management of human excreta in Europe and the renewal of knowledge, practices, and imaginaries related to ecological sanitation. And she's also interested in an art science approach to body fluids, waste, fermentation, rotting, etc. So, Maureen.
Hello, everybody. I'm going to try and share my presentation. I'm not sure I can share it already. Yes, okay. Do you see the diaporama?
Yes, we see.
Okay, so I wanted to share with you it's not the result of anything, it's a testimony about different experiments we have been conducting in France this, I would say, 10 past years about nutrient cycles, more specifically nitrogen. So I'm not going to talk about P exactly here, but this elementary cycle we are all indirectly or more directly focused on, because nitrogen is that one of the elements which is so difficult to grasp and to manage into our body fluids. It's always escaping from our understanding and from our managing tools. So the general idea here is to talk about the way in which the encounters between art and science can help us grasp these very abstract questions in different ways, and how it can help us to navigate through scales from our bodies and the inside of our bodies to the planetary boundaries, which is something completely out of our everyday life. So here you have this classical image of the nutrient cycles with the fields where the plant grows, and then the crops, the city or rural settlements where it's eaten, and then the toilets where it's getting rid of by our bodies, and then where does it goes? And our aim here in the Peecycling community is to get it back into the field in order to make the cycle start again. But then when you've said that, you've not said everything, because you have a lot of scales which are at stake here. Of course, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and then at another scale, pee and poo, which are bodily waste. And then you have people, it's in French here, but anyway, it's like a rainbow of scales, people, and then the supply chains, the logistics, and then the alimentary and the nutrition excretion systems, the metabolic system in a territory. And then you have the whole environment, the planetary scale, which is so far from us. So how to navigate between all these scales? We can talk about it, we can act on it, but then what about our imaginaries? What about telling stories about all this complex system? And what about taking it back into our intimate everyday life scale? That's what I'm trying to do here with my colleagues. Because human metabolism and territorial metabolism, so metabolism, the transformation of material and energy in the world, it's about sharing. Not only material and energetic flows are shared here between beings and between different spaces, but what is also shared is signs and symbols, because we are human, we have these brains that work with signs and symbols, and we have knowledge and imaginaries, meaning knowledge is not only rational, it's also sensitive. So here, the experiments I'm going to talk about try to mix the rational and the sensitive aspects of our relation to the nutrient flows. And the aim is also to make us get into contact with different forms of life at different scales again. So our everyday life, but the other living beings we live with, from the worm to the fish to the hen to the cow, etc. They also have a life, and they also participate to metabolic cycles. And then you have the life of our organs inside our bodies, human bodies, fish bodies, worm bodies. And then there is the bacterial life, for example, in the guts, but also in the soil and in the river. And then you have the chemical life. So all these scales are important. You cannot only talk about nitrogen, the little n here. You need to embed it into all these life forms, I think, in order to make it graspable. So now I'm going to share about different experiments that have been conducted, from writing workshops to metabolic walks to exhibition devices. Here are examples that have been conducted in France. It's in a specific context, which is post-industrial, which is urban, which is quite rich, which is close to the scientific community. But the idea to share it here is to share examples that can be transposed in other contexts with the local artistic tools and talents. So the form is not very important. What is important here is what we want to do, what we want to share, the stories we try to tell. So the first experiment I want to share is a metabolic walk we have conducted with Louise Raguet, which is a colleague which I've worked a lot with, which is a designer in OCAPI team. So it was on a university campus. You have the plan from above here. And the idea was to walk across the campus, coming from the dining hall and the toilets, and then going to the community garden. And so walking with the pathway of a nitrogen atom here. So you have devices here, written devices in the environment, in the space, and then with the people that participating to the visit, we just walk through and the metabolic pathway. So here you have the dining hall, where the atoms of this meal, are they going to end? Are they going to enter the river, or are they going to participate to crops fertilization? And then you have ideas in the garden in order to make it real. So here is about the walk. So this one was very atomic, elementary, but then we tried to do another one which was more embedded, and we tried to transport people from the body of the wheat to the body of the bread, to their own body, and then to the body of their excreta. What's going to happen next? More at an organic level. And this metabolic walk, which was filled with meditation moments, so imagine you are wheat, etc., etc. I'm going quite fast here, but we can talk more into details later if you want. So it ends with the sharing of a bread, which was cooked with wheat, which was fertilized with urine. So we work with this bread, but we also cook biscuits that we share with the wheat, which was fertilized with urine. We call it the golden cycle, boucle d'or in French. And so this is a very important tool to embody the cycle. Then another experiment I love is writing workshops. Here is one example here, is stories of digestion. The idea is to share the memories of a meal, but not from your point of view, but from the point of view of one of the food. For example, an apple or a grapefruit or a rump steak. anyway, so the idea is you don't do that alone. You share to your neighbor the souvenir, the memory of the meal, and your neighbor is going to write these memories and choosing one of the food you have eaten, and then it would give it back to you. So there is this 2 levels sharing experiment. So the stories I have collected are very funny in general, and I suggest you try to do that in your communities. It's a great tool to chill a little with your colleagues. I also write, but because that's my leisure, I write short stories, and I try to use the different registers of science fiction in order to figure how urine and how feces could be, and how nitrogen could be inserted into short stories. Because in literature in general, you don't talk about pee and poo, it's never present. So how if it was at the center of the story? So I'm not going into details here, but just taking one example, which is very important to me. In the dystopic side, what about if we were renting our nutritive elements to the nutrition excretion majors, for example, Veolia? What about Veolia owns your nitrogen atoms and you have to pay for using them in your body, for example? But another one, which is closer to us, what about if you, one morning, it's like in fantastic literature, what about if you find it impossible to use the flush button in your house? What are you going to do next? It's physically impossible. And then what happens next? You can invent different stories here. After these different modules, we've tried with my colleague Fabien Esculier, which is an OCAPI program coordinator, but which is also a musician and which is also a friend. We've created a show, poetic conference, which is called not Human Humans, but Human Humans. And we've tried to mix different registers in order to connect with people in different ways. And it's about the nitrogen cycle from the Big Bang to now. So it's a long story, to make a long story short, but it lasts 1 hour. And the idea is to talk about nitrogen in our body, then to go back to the stars where it comes from, and then to come back in a historical way until the moment where our system collapses. And how are we going to act next on that subject? So it's impossible to tell you this story now, but we would love it to be taken by a theatrical company. All of these are only experiments. We want to give them to others to make things bigger. So we've played that several times, and it's really a fruitful moment for us as scientists to be able to act poetically on this subject too, with different kind of publics. The 2 last experiments I wanted to share are more focused on nitrogen as an element. The first one, they call the nitroscope. The idea is to try and describe the nitrogen surcharge in all the environments, meaning that it's not only a problem about sanitation and agriculture, but it's also a problem with the transport industry. It's also a problem with, I will go directly here. It's a problem with the war industry, because the fertilizer, they also are used to make bombs. It's also a problem of the preservative in our food. So it's everywhere in our lives. So here you have a panorama of what happens after the Haber-Bosch principle is used, so to make synthetic nitrogen. And then we've tried to connect all these different dimensions together. And then you have this exhibition module, which is like toucher couler, we say in France, with little squares you can turn, and then you have a story at the back of it. So we've made a lot of short stories and connected to each other. It's like the story, you are the hero of the story, and you can go from one to the other. So it's not a very joyful story here, because it's telling all the problems in one panorama. And then the last one, it's both an exhibition module and a writing workshop. It's called The Tale of Nitrogen, Le dit de l'azote in French, and we've made it with Anaïs Tonder, a colleague which is an artist, and Jérôme Santolini, which is a biochemist. And the idea here is to have an exhibition where you have 60 entities linked to nitrogen. The focus is to don't focus on problems or on solutions, but just to get more familiar with the nitrogen cycles and all the nitrogen metamorphosis in all these dimensions. So you have living beings that pee and poo and that eat and digest. You have contaminants like nitrate, nitrogen dioxide, etc. You have substances that are made of nitrogen, from ammonitrate to dinitrogen, which is used in the United States for death penalty, for example. And then you have different places, wastewater treatment plant, but also a guano mine, or the kitchen, the toilets, the National Congress, all the places where nitrogen is at stake. And then we've built one evocative image and one nano short story. And the aim of the writing workshop is first to play with the images, to make absurd encounters, and then to open new imaginaries. For example, here you have a little child eating whipped cream, but you also have a guano mine close to it. There is a link between the two, because the gas used to make whipped cream is from nitrogen. So and then when imaginaries are open, the idea is to propose to make entities talk to each other and make dialogues between, for example, an alga and a pig, or your grandmother and the preservative of the ham she gave you to eat when you were a child, etc., etc. And what we want to do now is to travel with this tale of nitrogen and to collect more and more short stories and to make it bigger, like in the medieval era, when you have stories that come from one valley to one hill to one valley to one hill, and then you open up the story and you change it at the end. Thank you for your attention.
That was wonderful. You just so many interesting ideas of things that we can do to engage people, and I love the integration of art and science is just really exciting. Gives us ideas about work we can do here as well. We have a few minutes for question and answer, so we have a few things that are in the chat. Thank you. I can read it. Carol McCreary asks or comments that your approach to making communities aware of nutrient cycling is very doable, and she wonders if high school teachers would welcome such tours. I don't know if you're just asking that in general, Carol, but that's cool. Actually, now I can't read the next one.
But yeah, I'm curious, Maureen, if you've engaged local teachers as part of these efforts or thought about doing that in the future. If not.
Oh, so humans, we've played it for high school students in different environments, or for the science festival. But it's not very easy to enter into the national education system. So we work more with NGOs, Les Petits Débrouillards, for example, in France, that work on scientific education. It's easier to touch the national education system. It's a stronger challenge, but it's really needed, because we don't learn anything about sanitation at school, or we learn it out of the blue. And then what about nitrogen cycle? We don't learn it, or just a tiny bits of it. So it's so important to get more awareness about this subject, which is hidden also in the media, beside climate change and carbon obsession.
Yeah, that's so true. Here too, I don't think there's a lot of discussion about the nitrogen cycle at the high school level. So that's really something we
I guess I'm talking France.
Yeah. Great, thank you. And then someone else, Grove, mentions that it's a real life game app could be made as a way of translating this into some other media. And Julia, I don't know if you want to mention that about the website from Valut.
Yeah. And Brian was asking if there's a video of the play available anywhere. Was it recorded?
Not yet, but we are going to play it at the European Congress for Circular Sanitation in 2 weeks from now in English. So it would be really great if there was a filming of this, because it will be in English, so maybe easier to share.
Okay, great. And Sean Schaffner says there have been some very furtive collaborations in the US between scientists and dancers. He's wondering if that's happening in France and whether that might be another direction to explore.
Yeah, you're right. It has happened on other subjects. On our subject, not yet, but we would really love to make a greater collaboration with professional, because we are not professional artists, nor musician. And I dance a little, but I mean, it's not professional at all. So abstract expression. So we would love to get human humus a step further with this kind of collaboration. We need to find time to
Right.
act on that.
Right. That also reminds me, in your discussion about the theater work or the workshop, you mentioned giving it to the humanes ex I don't know exactly what you call it, a presentation. But you said that you were going to give it to other theaters to try it. And I wondered if you had done that and if what their reception had been so far.
What I wanted to say is that we would like to work with professionals in order for them to take it and transform it and make it something that can be played more often, because as it's not our principal activity, we just play it like 3 or 4 times a year, so it's really not a lot. And we haven't found for the moment the good contact, but we are still looking for that. It's not easy because it's so experimental, it's so
Yes.
all over the place. Of course, it will transform if someone else take it, but this would be great.
Okay, great. Thank you. And someone, Michael Reichman, mentions that there will probably be a filming of the show at the European Circular Sanitation Congress. Oh, that's great. Michelle Reichman. Thank you. Okay, great. So thank you, Maureen. We're going to, if you can stick around, there may be some more questions in the chat that you can respond to. But we'll move on to Lindsay Fenn for the next presentation. And a little different, but Lindsay is a Master of Public Administration. She's a Master of Public Administration graduate from Bridgewater State University in Massachusetts, where she focused her capstone research on environmental policy and community engagement on Cape Cod. Her work centers on sustainable wastewater solutions, including a recent study on public attitudes towards nutrient pollution and alternative technologies like urine diversion toilets. And she is committed to advancing equitable, community-supported approaches to water quality and environmental restoration. So, Lindsay, take it away. Are you there, Lindsay?
Yeah.
There you are. Great.
You're muted.
Okay. Can everyone see my screen? I'll put it in presenter mode.
Yeah.
Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you everyone for bearing with me. 1 second, let me get this out of here. Okay, so my presentation is called Understanding Public Acceptance of Urine Diversion Toilets on Cape Cod. And so for a brief introduction, as was stated, I just recently finished a Master of Public Administration at Bridgewater State University, and I focused my research on environmental policy, and I wanted to focus on a local problem, and the issue of nutrient pollution on Cape Cod came up very early, and very early on, it was clear there was a lot of people who were willing to discuss this, including a lot of people on this call, the Rich Earth Institute, Mass TC, the Green Center, et cetera. So I'm going to start off by talking about a description of the problem on Cape Cod, talk about my project motivation, which became a survey that went out to Cape Cod residents, talk about the respondents, who they were. The majority of the presentation is going to be talking about the survey's findings and then a couple of takeaways. All right, so for Cape Cod, it's a region of Massachusetts that is very coastal, and so they're having a nutrient pollution crisis. So about 90% of Cape Cod's coastal bays and more than a third of its ponds have unacceptable water quality. This is largely due to nutrient pollution, an excess of nitrogen and phosphorus that is affecting the saltwater. More of the nitrogen is affecting the saltwater, the estuaries and the bays, and the phosphorus affecting the freshwaters, the lakes and ponds. And so this is fueling cyanobacteria blooms, which are toxic to people, animals, the environment. It can subsequently affect the local economies and public health. So the cause of this is predominantly because of the household wastewater systems. So 85% of Cape Cod residents use traditional septic systems, you might know as Title V septic systems, which leach nitrogen and phosphorus into the groundwater. There's other ways in which this nutrient pollution is getting into the groundwater. A big one is fertilizers. So efforts that have been taken for the community and the local government have been over the past few years watershed plan. This was developed by the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection, or as we call it, Mass DEP. And so they established what is called total maximum daily loads, or TMDLs. So this sets nitrogen limits that go into each watershed. So that is kind of the framework that the region and its government kind of focuses on mitigation strategies. So it's focusing on what can reduce the nitrogen loads going into each watershed. So just to get, if you're not local, so this is the Cape Cod region. So we have this whole kind of like arm here is Barnstable County. And then you have Martha's Vineyard, which is Dukes County, Bristol County is over here, Plymouth County is up here. So those are the counties that I opened up the survey to. And so I included some of these connecting coastal counties because the watersheds do spread out here a bit. So in public administration or public policy, it's common to do a comparative analysis of the types of solutions that are out there. So when I entered this area and started talking to people, it was clear that there's a lot of different solutions that can be used in terms of household wastewater systems. However, the conversation seemed to be a bit dominated by sewer systems, which is just the common way that a municipality is going to tackle its wastewater issue. Cape Cod wasn't built with a lot of sewer systems initially. Mainland Massachusetts was. So then you're seeing a big boom of people living in Cape Cod, traveling to Cape Cod as tourists, and not a whole lot of sewering except for in like the main cities. Then we have the innovative alternative septic systems, or IA septic systems, which is a bit of a newer emergence. It's a newer septic system that can filter out the nitrogen. And then urine diversion toilets. Urine diversion is not legal in Massachusetts, and there was a lot of conversation about this being a great option and a lot of work being done to try to make it a legal option for residents to use. So I gave there 4 criteria for this comparative analysis: cost, how much does it cost, whether it be the taxpayer, whether it be the homeowner, timeline, how long is this going to take from start to finish? And this can be logistically, once everything is all set, how long does it take to, build this or install it? Or, with everything going on with permitting and just getting something ready to be scalable to use, how long is this going to take? Effectiveness in this situation, how effective is this solution in terms of reducing nutrient pollution? And feasibility, in this case, I think of it as public acceptance, whether it be community, and additionally, state legislators, community leaders, that sort of a thing. And so I gave, as a disclaimer, I gave these kind of color codes as what I believe is there. I'm sure it can be debated. However, I wanted to include this because when thinking about all of the options that Cape Cod had, it seemed like urine diversion was a really good option. Cost, really good. Effectiveness, really good at separating the urine at the source. No need to filter anything, change your septic system, expand sewer if you can just collect it at the source, have it removed from your home, and pasteurize, maybe even turn it into fertilizer. So super effective, very cost friendly in comparison. And timeline, I mean, if everything was ready to go, it would be very fast. But with all of the regulations and barriers, it couldn't get a perfect timeline at this point. But feasibility wise, it just didn't seem like something that had an easy path. So that was the motivation really of my research, was trying to understand, when there's such a good option in comparison, what makes something not feasible? Is it education? Is it legislation? What could it be? So that was my motivation to do a survey to community residents. So this survey that I ended up doing through Bridgewater State University, it was an anonymous-based, web-based survey that went out from February to April of 2025. So there was a survey incentives. There was like 2 raffle prizes. Not much. It was about, I think, gift baskets of $150 value apiece. We distributed it through a lot of regional partners. Some of these partners helped basically send it out to all different people. It just really became this web of different groups and individuals helping me spread it throughout the community. However, a lot of these groups are very engaged with this topic. They're very educated about this topic. So I was trying to get it out to more, just your common resident. And so I reached out to every local library that I could in this area of Cape Cod and the connecting counties to put up flyers to have a scannable code to take the survey. So in terms of design, I started with asking people's experience with water pollution in their area, government and policy thermometer, willingness to try new wastewater systems, including and maybe especially urine diversion toilets, cost thresholds for people about trying new technologies, regulatory, permitting, and siting considerations, and then demographics. So there was 166 valid responses that I was able to use. So who were the types of people that responded? There was some major trends. A lot of these people had single family homes, so they weren't renters. They'd lived there for over 10 years. They were over age 60. Primary residence on Cape Cod. Something about Cape Cod that I guess is relevant is that it's a place where you might find a lot of people having second homes, like vacation homes. So most of the people that we reached were primary residents. Many of them were retired, but there was a kind of close second to full-time employed. A large majority of them were from Barnstable County, which is kind of just that main section of Cape Cod. And as I mentioned before, from the responses, as you'll see, I think a lot of these people were very engaged with the topic and very educated. So as much as my efforts tried to get, more average residents to get their feelings on things, I think there was some bias in who was willing to take the survey in general. So first, experience with water pollution. So 76% of respondents observed pollution in their lakes and ponds, 58% near their beaches. 95% were aware of cyanobacteria blooms affecting their lakes and ponds. 80% currently have Title V septic systems, which is that base septic system that doesn't filter out any nutrients. And 86% felt that addressing water pollution was one of the most important issues that the region faces. So the other option there was, no, I don't think this is a big problem. And the other one was, I think it's really important. However, I think there are other more equal issues in the community. And so those people were able to share what their other issues were. And overwhelmingly, it was having to do with housing and affordable housing. So in the question, what should the local and state governments prioritize when making decisions on wastewater upgrades? Overwhelmingly, people said that reducing water pollution as much as possible was important. So this was, they were able to choose up to 3. So that's why you see, there isn't percentages here, it's a number. So following that was encouraging community input and engagement, which I thought was interesting in comparison to the other options. Then we have some close thirds: minimizing greenhouse gas emissions, keeping costs as low as possible for residents, completing the upgrades as quickly as possible. And then we had lower, promoting job creation and economic benefits, minimizing household energy costs, and minimizing disruption to traffic and local infrastructure. When asked what they believe are the biggest challenges in addressing wastewater pollution on Cape Cod, many of them thought that lack of funding was the issue. Following was lack of public awareness, then following by insufficient infrastructure. And the others were resistance from residents or landlords and leasing companies or local and town governments, then resistance from state government, permitting issues, and unsure. So when asked how effective do they think current efforts from local government have been to address wastewater pollution, most of them, 57%, said somewhat effective, which I thought was, pretty decent. Looks like very effective was a smaller fraction of it, unsure, no efforts that they were aware of, and then not affected was 29%. All right, so getting into the financial aspects. So, in making these wastewater household changes, there's different cost thresholds that each of these things are going to cost. And I wanted to get a sense of basically what price points were going to make people feel I can do this versus this is going to be really stressful for me. So at $5,000, when asked how financially feasible would $5,000 be for you to change out your wastewater technology in your home, we have not financially challenging at 31%, would need to adjust my budget at 44%, would need to take on debt at 15%, would need significant financial assistance at 6%, and so challenging I may consider moving at 11%. Moving up to 15,000, 13% said not financially challenging, 38% would need to adjust my budget, tie for third for the next two, and only 2% said so challenging I may consider moving. And then the last one at 50,000, 3% said not financially challenging, 18% said would need to adjust my budget, 16% said would need to take on debt, 37% would need to have a significant financial assistance, and 22% would feel they needed to potentially consider moving out of the area. So you can see the kind of natural progression as the price point goes up. So this next question has to do more with the tourism industry that I mentioned earlier. So the Cape Cod Commission on their website, it says that I think it was last year, the region saw about 5 million tourists visit the Cape Cod region. So that's a lot of people that come each year that need to use the restrooms. And so it begs the question, or did beg the question, should the residents be shouldering the cost of all of these things when a lot of, the problem could be coming from the tourism industry? So in 2018, the government responded to that by adding a $2.7 excise tax on traditional lodging and short-term rentals in Cape Cod. And this was introduced to help fund the wastewater upgrades needed for the summer population surge. They were asked, do they think that this was a sufficient contribution from the tourism industry? So 40% most felt that no, the tax should be raised. Then 26% thought, no, I think we should find other ways to have the tourism industry contribute. 15% said, yes, it's enough. 19 were unsure. So when asked specifically about urine diversion toilets, have people heard of them? 77% said, yes, I know about them and I understand how they work. They're very confident about their knowledge of the subject. 14% said, yeah, I've heard of them, but I would like to know more. And 10% said they didn't know anything about it. Next, would you be willing to participate in a pilot program to test alternative wastewater solutions, such as urine diversion toilets, if it were offered in Cape Cod and the islands? They were told they were not agreeing to anything by answering this question. So 50% said yes, they would be willing to participate in a pilot program. 23% said maybe. 27% said no. So would you be willing to consider alternative wastewater technologies such as urine diversion toilets in your home? 44% said yes, definitely. 24% said maybe, need more information. 10% no, I do not currently want to replace any of my current systems. So this 10%, based on some of the written responses, a few of these questions that, there was a lot of responses, so I didn't include it in these presentations, but this presentation. However, we saw in the demographics that 10% I think it was 60% were over 60. Some of those were over 80. And so a lot of the people that were saying they were in their 80s or older were saying it just didn't feel like something that they wanted to do, to upend their yards or their homes to do these types of upgrades, which could answer who that 10% was. 8% said no, I prefer to try other options such as innovative alternative septic system. 4% said no, my home is on town or county sewer system, so I don't think I need to update anything. And 1% said that they didn't like the idea of urine diversion toilets. When people were given the opportunity to express any concerns about urine diversion toilets, the highest was costs and logistics of installation, followed by how the urine will be used and disposed of, then followed by location of the storage tanks, then cost and logistics of maintenance and monitoring, and 31 said that odor was a concern, and then the last one here, unfamiliarity with the technology. So we asked just a couple of questions about the regulatory permitting process. So when asked how confident people feel about navigating regulatory challenges or permitting processes when considering replacing their household wastewater systems, only 12% felt very confident, 46% said they were moderately confident, and 41% were not confident. So this next question kind of expanded on that and saying, how likely would it be to go through this process to upgrade your household wastewater system if there was a consultant to help guide you through the process? 48% said much more likely, 34% said somewhat more likely, and 18% said it would make no difference. All right, so just the takeaways from the findings in the survey, in a lot of the written responses that I received, there was strong evidence of respondents experiencing wastewater pollution in their region and especially near their homes. There was a sense of urgency. A lot of people really wanted something that could be done fast and effectively. There was moderate to strong interest in exploring urine diversion toilets as a household wastewater management system. Support for residents, it looks like financially and logistically, would really impact the level of willingness they have to try a new wastewater system. And so personal reflections, that mitigation efforts for phosphorus should be prioritized for the freshwater. I know from some of the community partners that I was able to work with that the lakes and ponds are experiencing a lot of issues, predominantly from the phosphorus, as I've been told. And so some of these other solutions are not focusing on the phosphorus, just the nitrogen. And so the urine diversion toilet covers both the nitrogen and the phosphorus. This issue is pervasive and hard to control by any one body, meaning maybe one town, one group, one, whether it's focusing on grassroots. So this basically requires community and cross-sector collaboration in order to make it happen. The problem didn't stem from one place, and therefore it's not going to be fixed by one group of people or organization. So lastly, the residents of Cape Cod have varying levels of resources to dedicate to this problem. So by offering an alternative like urine diversion toilets, which are cost effective and just overall effective, this could be another tool for those whom it's more fitting for. Thank you so much. A special appreciation to Bridgewater State University and their College of Graduate Studies for funding this research. And then the other partners, Green Center, Falmouth Pond Coalition, MassTC, and Rich Earth Institute really helped me develop the survey, learn about the problem, and help share the survey afterwards. So thank you so much.
Great, thank you, Lindsay. That was very interesting. So some of the things that you mentioned, appreciate your reflections at the end. Something that really struck me was just how you're getting lots of claps from various people, so that's great. Just a lot of the number of people who felt the problem was urgent, and I had the privilege of being able to read a lot of these the responses that you got. Was really astounding to me. Shows how important the issue is for people, and also the fact that so many of your respondents said that not only was addressing this urgent, but that engaging the community seemed to be the next most important thing to them. So that people really want to be involved and want to be consulted. So that was really interesting. Yeah, you're getting a lot of excellent, nice job. Very glad to see the survey, see the results. So thank you for doing it and for all the work that you put into it.